Hello, everyone. Welcome to this YouTube live session on fearless compassion. See, compassion is something that we all have in us. It is hardwired into our brain. We are born with it, and we are able to extend it, expand it, cultivate it. So, today I'm going to talk about not just plain compassion, but about the concept of fearless compassion. Now, what is fearless compassion? Being fearless, we all know, is the characteristic of a hero. Yes? All heroes are fearless. That's why we admire them. You take your Superman, your Spider Man, your fictional heroes, your real heroes. They look after others and they go to take care of others, having no fear in them at all. So that is fearlessness. Now, how do we apply this fearlessness and fearless compassion to ourselves? See, the emotion of compassion will only begin when there is suffering. So, there is suffering in ourselves or in someone else, and our goal is to be able to acknowledge the suffering, accept it, release the fear in ourselves or release the fear in the other person with kindness and compassion, and find the courage to do what is right to overcome the suffering. So, that is what fearless compassion actually is. Compassion is something we all know it, we feel it, we know it is there within us. But so is fear. Because of the brain's natural negativity bias, we fear many things which may be real, which may be imaginary. Now, this fear actually comes from our sense of I, me, myself. It comes from your ego, because the ego is constantly thriving to overcome any pain, any difficulty, any discomfort. And so that fear stops us sometimes from acknowledging that there is a suffering that is occurring which requires to be dealt with. Now, let us talk with some examples. One of the examples is when you're diagnosed with a serious illness. So, when you're diagnosed with a serious illness, we go through various stages before we actually acknowledge the illness as being there and something that we need to deal with. So, the first stage that we go through is denial. It is not happening to me. Then we slowly, after a while, realize that it is happening to us, and we try to go into the next stage where we say, why me? How can this happen to me? I cannot cope with it. It is just too difficult for me to handle. And why am I, why is it, am I cursed? Who caused it? Why did this occur? We get into this kind of questioning mode as to why we have become a victim. Once we do that, sometimes some people stay in that phase for a very long time. But more often than not, circumstances, the illness itself, the doctor, the family will take you to the next stage of saying, see, it doesn't matter, it is there, we have to deal with it. So when we go to that stage, your ego will self sabotage you. Your ego will say, no, 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 you don't have the strength to cope with this. You cannot make a recovery from this. This is going to be the rest of your life, or this is going to be the end of your life, or whatever. So then we get into a stage of depression and helplessness. Now, when we get into the stage of depression and helplessness, what many of us tend to do is we tend to take wrong decisions. We are in a hurry to get better, so we sometimes seek the help from the wrong direction, or we listen to wrong advice, and very often we make wrong choices, or we make no choices at all. It is only when we cross this stage and we see that whatever is happening is inevitable, it is a suffering, it is a discomfort, that we say, okay, I am going through this. Nobody else can go through this for me. I need to accept and deal with this. And only when you get into the stage of acceptance, where you have overcome the fear, will you start dealing with it. Now, there are many ways in which we deal with it. Some of us deal with it as if it is a punishment we are imposing upon ourselves. Some of us deal with it in a way that, oh, look at me, we wallow in self pity. But the way that we need to deal with this is what we are going to talk about today, is by using fearless compassion. So, what is fearless compassion? We become kind to ourselves and we say, yes, you have your limitations, you have your problems, you have your suffering, but you can do it. So look within you, find the strength, and you can handle it. Look outside you, expose your vulnerability, ask for help, and find people who can help you. Marshal your resources, analyze what resources you need, what you have, what you need to use, and take active action in actually overcoming the suffering. But when you're doing this with utmost kindness to yourself. You don't sabotage yourself, you don't hurt yourself, you don't, insult yourself. You just go ahead and just learn that you deserve that kindness, you deserve that help from everybody else. And so you are compassionate to yourself. And when we do that, we find that we make all the right choices. We make amazingly good decisions and we end up doing the right thing. So, fearless compassion is overcoming the fear and being kind to ourselves and doing what needs to be done in the right way, in the right time, in the right process without any fear. Now, fearless compassion is something that this is with regard to ourselves. See, in general, as human beings, we like happiness. Okay? So, this opens the door to genuine self acceptance and self care. See, none of us we don't want to suffer. Nobody enjoys suffering. Nobody wants to suffer. So, we want to overcome the suffering. But our ego will get in the way, and it looks as if we become afraid of being kind to ourselves. And this comes from the strong sense of I. Am I strong enough? Am I capable of this? Is whatever I'm going to do going to harm me further? So there is that fear. Now, when it comes to others also, we need to show fearless compassion. See, today's world is full of hatred, war, hurting each other. But after COVID, I think we all have become a little kinder because COVID itself taught us fearless compassion. Now, fearless compassion, how did we learn? Through COVID. We learned that others are like us, others are going through the same thing. And this was not just a localized, regional, national kind of phenomenon, it was a global phenomenon. So, everywhere in the world, people were suffering. And everywhere in the world, this suffering brought out our compassion. But it also brought out our fear. We were so terrified. We used to wash our hands, we won't touch each other, we'll wear a mask, we'll do all these kind of things. But through that fear, what did doctors and nurses do? They sacrificed their time compassionately to take care of patients. What did neighbors do? They went out of their way to help each other. What did family members do? Even if they had not been in touch with each other for ages, they all got together. So everybody bonded, everybody became kinder, everybody became more considerate. And it was all through this fear. So we all just overcame that fear in order to give vent to our compassion. So isn't that beautiful? So we can do that in our everyday lives. Now, actually, compassion is very important if you're a leader. The Buddhist tradition defines three types of compassionate leadership. One kind of compassionate leadership is the trailblazer. Now, the trailblazer leads from the front, like in a war, like in a battle. So the king will go, he will lead the whole army, he'll lead from the front and takes risks and leads the entire army behind him. Now, a typical example of such a trailblazer type of fearless, compassionate leader was Martin Luther King. Now, Martin Luther King, for those who don't know who he is, was a black, uh, what shall I say? He was not a preacher, he was a black spiritual man who was fighting for equality for the blacks. So he did it in a non-violent way where he would give talks, he would tell people, don't accept discrimination, don't bow down and be a slave. So he stood on the podiums, took the risk, and he was enthusing the other blacks not to take the ill treatment from anyone. So he was a trailblazer leader. Of course, he took risks, and actually, finally, he was shot while he was giving one of his talks. But the fact is that to this day, nobody has forgotten what he did. And that started a huge movement which got a lot of freedom for the blacks and the complete reversal of many very discriminatory laws which were there. The second type of leader is like a ferryman in a boat. What he does is he has passengers on his boat. He accompanies his passengers. He takes care of them. And he designs and shapes which direction he should take the boat, what are the ups and downs he has to manipulate in order to take his people safely across the river to the other shore. An example of this kind of selfless compassion is the Dalai Lama. When the Chinese invaded Tibet and did that in such a brutal fashion, the Dalai Lama did not retaliate. He and his people moved quietly, silently, and willingly to various other parts of the world, and India gave them gave them shelter. And to this day, they have not accepted the Chinese invasion as being inevitable. They know there is a suffering there. They've accepted the suffering. But they've also done it with compassion. They've been kind both to themselves and to the invaders. So that is another form of fearless compassion. The third type of fearless compassion is what we see with many corporates and many businesses, is the shepherd. Now the shepherd takes care of his flock and he makes sure that every person in every sheep in his flock is safe and protected from harm. So probably we could give this example could be Abdul Kalam. So you see, we have all these inspirational leaders who are practicing fearless compassion on a day-to-day basis. So I'm doing this little mini video for you just to remind you, be kind. Be kind to yourself because you deserve it. Be kind and generous to others. Understand that compassion will not come out unless there is suffering. So understand that if you are suffering, it is a good opportunity for you to raise your level of compassion towards yourself. And if someone else is suffering, you can extend, expand, and develop your compassion to help them overcome their suffering. So, to do that, you have to reach out. And to reach out, you must feel free from fear. See, what we tend to do is now, if I reach out, if I do this, what is the risk to me? What will happen to me? See, these leaders never worried about what happened to them. Their intention was completely with kindness, compassion, and generosity to relieve the suffering of others. We need more people like that in the world today. So, this session which I'm doing, please understand that there will be more such sessions. It is to inculcate and to activate and to, what shall I say, light up the humanity in you. My name is Dr. Prithika Chary. I am a neurologist, neurosurgeon, brain health, and resilience coach. I have been in the practice of neurology for more than 45 years in the city of Chennai. And I have heard thousands of people, and they have got better and felt better, not just because of the medicines and the prescription I gave across, but because in my own way, I was not afraid to be more compassionate, to give more of my kindness, my prayers, my love to these patients. Every prescription that I give, when I hand it over, in my heart, I say a silent prayer. Dear God, bless this prescription and may they become well. So learn to go outside your ego, go outside of I, me, myself, and be there not only for yourself, with kindness and compassion and fearlessness. Be the hero, be fearless, be compassionate, and go and help others who are suffering. Thank you all very much for attending today. And I look forward to sharing some more ideas, thoughts, and life lessons which I have learned. I run an initiative called Creative Karma and Be Your Best with Dr. Prithika Chary. And that is where all these programs are coming from. Bye. Have a great life. And this moment, combine radical generosity with fearless compassion and make someone else's life better. Thank you.